나오래 나는 저게 제사당은 어다 개와치마 개발에 들랑 한도단 된도니셰 당 한도라 개발렘바네 냐와이다 든도 숨제 다디네 냐와린다 다녀이기 다녀함 접기에서데다 도시네 아주 이쇼에 된마 도시네다 예비 찬예기 대진바디기 도수스여레서 된마 이슈로다.
So in the context of looking at our future rebirths, recognizing that they can only be in one of two directions, either remaining in the high realms or falling into the lower realms. We are looking in detail at the sufferings of beings in the lower realms, looking right now at those of the beings in the hells. So we'll just continue from where we concluded.
지단 아주기 대신발 말씀 디원 마도 소시어르시 대당아주 점리들 다 디원 마 바나 갈마 땡 안주기 마토마도 야치 코론주의 니에로시 두시는 용 유유로 되네.
And just first, in relation to the question from this morning, so whilst we cannot perceive the hell realms, and therefore wherever they are to be found is something beyond us to recognize, but we should have confidence that they exist, whether they are unseen by us or not.
자상 바세두마 예바 아니 신도 차신 바와 주대 냐신 세진 자기 세신 라도 바베 아니 퐁네 푸데 지원의 진바당 아니 카다 미다 나다 나와 보가 니네 바베 보고 알수 공부 탐진의 매랍도 바와다 자기 세시 바와라 간게 Lama 카법도 샤데 내 자기 토에 토와 메랍도 바르 동신 냐와 제도.
So continuing in the text, so in the ebook, the handout, in the middle of page 105, in the published book, in the middle of page 91. So coming to the hot hell. In hot hell, the hell guardians put the sentient beings into very hot and blazing iron cauldrons several yojanas wide and fry them like fish. They are impaled through their buttocks on blazing iron stakes that emerge at the crown of their heads. Fire blazes out of their mouths, their eye sockets, nostrils and ears, as well as all their pores. They are laid out on their backs or face down on the blazing iron foundation and pounded and tormented with blazing iron hammers.
당아질에 델리아 내 가리어스네 세션 맞은 자 집베스 자 베네 뇌 첨보를 되네기 바세 자 첨보여 봐 되네기 날마 안에지 지게 다디 자디 지매바 사와슈여데 질야 디날마 다디네기 냐와바 메심제 되게 디나마 루제네 안지 파 세고 레스펜 나중에 다디 가서 동시에 교바 디용으로 빼는 가서데 사하나도 벤눔 초초다 디네게 랑아 초나라 냐면 마시바도 루시는 거고로 디나 신신에 두시네 냐나신 야신 섹스도 제사 두시네 마 디나레 치주고래 세송도안.
We see here that beings are placed into these very hot blazing iron cauldrons in which they are cooked alive. In this, we can liken to what some fish have to experience, either being fried alive or boiled in a pot. So some beings, even in our world, suffer in this way.
다니네 자게 세신 rabdu 바웨 폰네 푹데 지워 진바당 카다 미다 나다 나와 무거니니 나네 당 아니 바귀 푸 탐제네 메라도 바와스 제자드 자게 세시스리 자기 동유현 제유현데 정부제 바직 파 주신마 원마 두신 지게 수분마 두스 주어레스 주어도 다디 차와 메바르들 자 니기 주어도 디기 나올을 메세 메디게 당한 저게 두신 미다 나와다 카다 너우다 이거 쳐서 어느 수비게 당아도 돼 제 바위고서 수불을 부여해서 이거 조조조 여러 된수 쳐서 몇 되용을 해제래 다 매발고 해제래 매랍도 봐와서
And we see that they are impaled, and because of the intensity of the heat of the environment, they are flaming from the inside as well, and that explodes out through their various orifices, their mouths, their eye sockets, and so forth.
Dene 가리었네. 자기 세시 바와라 genjewa kabob도 샤데 자기 토에 아니 메라도 배 동시 냐와 제도서 dene 자 처우 dene 자 투부 처우 강 봐 자침보다 디가를 봐. 근데 바시 gen지로 봐 녀주야. 같이 마 카부로 녀주 디가를 자기 토와 메 처우 메바드게 되게 동전도 시 동거를 제 동전 dene 강아데 동안 용거를 제
And thereafter they are laid out on this blazing iron ground, and thereupon they are pounded with blazing iron hammers.
And 다데네 디체 사와 데네 랍도 사와 딜레다 딜레한 사와 슈체다 균이가 랍도 사와세 딜레 다데지 사와 딜레 사와 더블로게 채와요. 그래서 그러다 차와디 디가르스는 다 자기 세신 제순바 요 풍수 주대 되네 제 이윤이 차반이 되네 부모 지원에 진노 될라데네 네 칼라소비 고남네 메제 바와 중오스 아니 자세 자글레 사신 랍도 바웨기 류지신 아니 자상 Gyurchi Barves, Kangwe Nando, Jisu Jene, Golwana, Tiao Tega Namso Dro, Dice, and Dice Babadang, Shata Nam Shine, Geru Bashi, Lubece, Yang, and Chungnie, Jaji, Sesila Demo, Dene, Baba. 샤차 깨바나 양낭도 주고 야 라마니 차와단 자오스.
As with moving to the next hell, but as with each of these, the suffering becomes somehow even more intense, and the duration of the lifespan there also increases. So in the very hot hell, an iron trident is stuck into the buttocks so that the right and left prongs emerge from the two shoulders and the middle one from the crown of the head. Owing to that, tongues of fire blaze from orifices such as the mouth. Their bodies are wrapped in blazing hot iron sheets and placed headlong into an iron cauldron full of boiling liquid, whereupon they are tossed about, up and down, as they boil. Then, once their skin, flesh and blood have been cooked away and nothing but the skeleton is left, they are pulled out again and spread out on the iron foundation. After that, when the skin, flesh, and blood have developed again, they are thrown back in. Apart from that, it is like the hot hell.
퐁수 주네스 메뉴 야그 메네야 ubne야 두신 주요의 자숨네 되네 직디 제기마리 관의 마트 니디 본바예네 인마트 통고래제 지선 주대 제숨 이윤이당 차트 이윤이 차바니당 아니 우마 지원의 진노의 대용으로서 되네 되어도 자디 배지 낭로를 차고 매발되어 진자 내려 되네 아니 디기 나로 쳐서 치지네 되지 나그 이제 칼라소비 권에 매체 바로 중어서 지난 카다 다다 누구 되지나 이제는 자산을 가지고 매발 된 거래 시대. 당아서 빈 소다를 두고다 빈 소다 만지 이거는 뭐지가래 지겨워 지 매발 두어진 데에 매라블라 바에 동도 안 소다는 용도 어디나신 주관서 두스테디 다 자디는 주요되 되네 누구나 미다 암저 주스 매두 리도용어서 다 나오는 숙제고 바위 견제.
So you see here at the beginning of the description of the experience in the very hot hell, that it's similar to what we had above in the hot hell, but here, instead of just being pierced with an iron stake, it's now a trident. And once again, it pierces the entire body. And because of the heat of the trident, as well as the environment, the being that is being tormented in this way erupts in flame from within. And then those flames burst out through their orifices and so forth. So here the imagery is something similar to what we see in some factories. I forget what they call, but where iron is made, then we see blazing heat there. So this is the lived experience of these beings.
지수도 아니 제네 고외 아니电话 태가네 남수 조어시데 나가질레 자렙렙 자렙세 디네기 파 수볼 파 지야라서 이제 자렙 메시도 바르디 바디게 두 지세 아니 미니 자서 메 바르도나 마 두스 루고레세 디네 지수세도 파 고디 마 고슈로시마 디마 루시 고고르 마 고신디네야 두시는 고고레스 디네 고여데 디네 차와디기 메바제电원파 먼저 이게 세네 남수조 가서 태가 남수조세 다디바 코에데 안내가데 디네 디체 안내 가르쳐서 차와디기 쉬신 샤당 근데 빠빠당 샤남 차사 시신 바 마사지네 바如果 메바데 자로 그래서 막 근데 쉬신 마 체네 쉬 메바찬 如果 마도 메바 차고래 신네 게루 바식 리버제 게시 바도 게루 바식 리베체 세디바도 셔진데 남수 조와세 디디네기제 안디스 가르시르스네 디세 샤다 빠바다 如果 치자 가서 빠바다 쳐서 마 시신 마 쉬르데가 如果 장자 하디요 레세 게루 바식 리수
So thereafter, their bodies are wrapped in blazing hot iron sheets. So from this we immediately see that there is no respite for their suffering. It's not that their tormented bodies are being wrapped in something soothing, but rather it just compounds their suffering. Then they once again are thrown into this iron cauldron full of a boiling liquid. And the heat is so intense that their bodies are destroyed, as we see in the next sentence, leaving nothing but the skeleton left.
Dene yang chungni 자기 사실을 좀 야주 된제 야 자기 파 배자 처보소 가 자기 파 강리야 된세고 그래서 파 잠세고 그러지 데모 점소 dene ane 데모도 야 샤바바지 수수용 그러지 양지 자강 야강 된세 샤이 dene 바바다 샤타 예바나 양야수 수수시네 님만나 차고 그래서 지자지 요도 양제마도 진 대신하지 지고 그러지 양나도 주고.
And thereafter, this process just continues in that even though their body is destroyed, it again, due to the power of the karma they've created, under the control of their karma, their bodies reconstitute, and the torment just continues.
잔다되게 안되노 잠바되게 대신에 강에 차와 시시바데 지바레서 라마네 차와나 자오스.
And we see there's similarity between these two hells, being the hot hell and the very hot hell.
That's how. That 날매들이 난 차셔디다. 냐 날매세데 딜이 나 독셔디 차고로. 날매니에서 셔초네 사시 빠세 제주 아니 제주마 여바 제주마就是빠세 가서 빠세 자타 두마 여바 자타도 두마 여바 군도 바신 아니 체발레 메버위기 슈공데 데 심전 대다기 바바다 샤다 르바다 르바나 림기 신네 강라 투바르 제도상
So then to the worst of the hells, that of Avicii, without respite, the foundation is completely ablaze for hundreds of yojanas from the eastern direction. As it spreads, the force of the fire increases, gradually destroying the skin, flesh, sinews, and bones of the sentient beings to the marrow.
지난다 되네기 샤르촌에 지리 샤르촌 호조 누조 초시지데 다 샤르촌은 수 매바지 매발 차오시 우지진리 도시네 바니레요도 난 디기 메디기 차와디기 가르치고서는 다 되네기 안능하서 룰파 직레요도 안디기 셈장 데즈니가 셈장디게다 샤다 바바다 규바다 차사 측신에 안직 도시는 如果刚是的，但如果嘛都没法的，等你把都车上修住过来是没法子，等你给他拿参与动啊的用过来是个了。
So here we see from the description that the heat isn't constant, but it increases, and as it increases, the intensity of the pain grows, and eventually the body is entirely destroyed, as it says here. And the bones, destroying the sentient beings, the bones are right down to the marrow. Like the wick of a butter lamp, their whole bodies are pervaded by blazing tongues of fire.
barhya dungdele bichi me barsha gorwa sina de dondala disor ma dinan ma singni be phata du nganzu gi me da rugo ya ha mo cha ma bo de dini ju yore so da.
So here this being cannot be even clearly perceived. There's just like a wick in a butter lamp, that the body is just consumed by fire.
초신 숨양 대단자디 초신이 묘옹바 데르 대베 둥어와 바르마치도 녀베 냠답이 기진베 셈전도 셰바자모스.
It is similar from the other three directions. As the fire coming from the four directions mingle, these beings experience incessant sufferings, and only by their pathetic howling can they be recognized as sentient beings.
지난다 초신의 대시 샤션도 바와나 누브다 로다 장다 초시간도 바 주줄이도 단 차상수 도묘도 지자 초시 매바와 원와 데르 제베에서 차상 념도 차다 메디 마세 축축 뭐 샤르와 지자 차상데 데나게다 셈진디게 차상 칭네 동아와 바르메 제바 녀베 베 균딘데 데서 로 동타 먹고 용고래 데니기 녀네 냠다비기 기 진비 셈제점도 시에서도 파단다 메로지마도 미 셈제로지 예와 체마토예제 가르하고 그것은 델레 아사스니 기다 게로지 고고래 디점 데서 게섬니 고데 데점다 호셈제 두여바 하고 마도 믹다데는 메다 직버로지 예와 체마토예제 샤도요 레제 진짜 냠다비 기 진바 기 진비 셈제점 셈제도 셰바 잠모스 다 게게고 바다데 델레 셈제 여바다 하고 두고 고고래지래.
So as the fires come together from all directions, the heat and the intensity of the suffering just increases even more, and it becomes impossible to perceive beings anymore because of the intensity of the fire. The only way one could know that there are beings being tormented is through their pathetic howling.
그래서 자기 심의 나도 자기 메다 버럽도 바비기 탑도 주고 왔어요. 탑도 주고 왔어요. 나데니기 메 바비기 유에도 다가지 디알이야 바 비치게 다지 메 바진 야 직바 아주 샤르 타바나지 야로 직 도신 로주고 있어라드네.
Contained in iron baskets, they are made to jump about on blazing metal. And again, they are in a position where they have no respite at all from suffering. Everything that touches them causes immense pain.
자기 리첸보 남라 밥색지도 주고 나디나래 자기 되니게 리첸보네 매바도 리임바질 대 야조마로 야 자주 마 밥주시 지고 이제 다 메나 도시네.
They are made to fall down on the iron foundation or the iron ground and to climb up huge iron mountains. So they are compelled to move in this way.
단지네 칸에 제 총제 풀과 예 장내에서 랑게 고라 제바 신도 안에 탁장대 녀마당 안에 감쿰 매바르체도스.
Their tongues are pulled out from their mouths and stretched with 100 pegs so as to remove folds and creases, as though preparing cowhides.
지사다 두신은 칸 바제게 파 땡지 펀니 바 탁바된 풀바 주지 마땡 파天다天的下我这老巴当更巴当那就接当恰上把天ji 파 쿰마 주게 파 자 두시 두신 두샤 고레시데那地里头变的베나한 저기 샘제 빠고 고디기 파티 감주가 파 텐신 지 두신의 감고 어디나지 지고 해서 진짜 랑기 고 제바신 당제의 녀마다 배 쿰마도 녀마다 쿰바 매발 두시고래 파 텐지 두시고래 제는.
So they are further tormented in the way described here, which is similar to how animal hides are prepared.
다디네야 지게 자기 사실라 간주도 샤데에서 자기 제지에 카체네 자기 안툴룸 툴룸바와 카르주신스 지나다도신 마야 집 간제 바자 두신 자 매바리나 마 간제샤 데네 가지레 두신 가지게 한 카체게 자케제 카체샤제 데마 자 도도 메마랑 바주디 바카나는 뭐 루고레제다.
Then again, they are placed on the iron foundation on their backs, their mouths are opened with iron tongues, and blazing lumps of iron are inserted into their mouths.
데네야 상고와 칼루니에서 카당 꼬마다 유마남 치데 아니 로메네 중고스 다데마 카나마다 대한 짜게 주베 마음 쾌되게 이게 쾌마디바 카나는 뭐 루지데 루에데 데마 카나마 루데 바직 반닝다 유마다 샤상마 칭진파 지마 긴좀 칭진마 뭐 저기 쪼보바바 나신지마 면마 두스된 거래지래.
Boiling copper is poured into their mouths and burns their mouths, throats, and entrails before issuing from their lower bodies.
And
apart from that, it is like the very hot hell.
that 동안 된남 윤이셔서 지점도 용와니 시팅래 다 동안도 윤류를 마스나 기디롱 용고래 윤가제 용고래스네 다 시팅 날마 두순고래 제 시팅래 데더 동안신도 미세로 제와 차자 냠소 뇨야니 네 지시 미게 데세 마규바 데시 소단자야 미규로시에 손바 따로사.
How long those sufferings are experienced is stated in Letter to a Friend. Although you endure for billions of years such utterly unbearable sufferings, for that long you will not relinquish your life until that non-virtue has been exhausted.
이사다 시린 나라 가르송와지네 니네게 동안 용고에 되게 빼 동안 신도 미세바 동안 빠도 매바 지 동안 첨보의 용고에 제와 차절로 제와당 차 야라서바 용고고레스 대안에 니치시 미게 디세 마세바 냐마 디포기 사셰비기 디 뉴비기 되고도 마세바도 용고고레스 디시도 소단자야 미교 시사디 디비 되고도 용마사바도 아니 그 시야요 말해서 시야요 말해서.
So we see here from this verse, from this quotation from Nagarjuna, that this intense suffering lasts for an incredible length of time, and it does not end until that non-virtue has been completely exhausted.
And in 제송바든 대양사 다디 로세의 시고래 밀롱업주라 개신 리시 로 샤지리에서 당한 중에 개신 리시세 저러와 건축에 샤부직라 안중에 뒤에 가서 밀롱업지 담버려서 밀롱업주를 건축 샤부직 맞다 안주 밀롱업주로나 건축 샤부직 맞고 말 샤부직이래서 제가 밀롱업주 어줄라 개신 리시게 샤직 샤직세
Moreover, the treasury of Abhidhamma and the levels of yogic practice state that 50 human years are one day in the God realm of the four great kings.
다 되니게 샤버직 되니게다 롱업정업 집에 샤버직 집에게 대 업주 제바데 민가도 밀롱업주 담배 샤버직 집에게다 되니게 가소래 다워 중이 스토디 로직차로 걸어봐 네 로직차로 봐 되네 대중이라 로제베스 로제베 로 납자니 냐와라 냐와 온위게 체세도 세데 제자 데네기 롱업지 담바데 샤버 찍지 근데 데네기 영업중업지 샤버 찍지 때도 숨지마라 다워지로와 데네기 다워찍디 중인집 로직제 로직제베 대지단 다 데네기 로직베 로 납제 담바레스 롱납제 담바니 냐와기 냐와 양수식이 체레스 냐와 양수세디 다 체세를 맞춰 가서는 디니기 집이 롱납제 담바디 냐와 양수기 체레스 오라
30 of those 1 month and 12 of those 1 year. 500 such years is the lifespan of the beings of the four great kings. All of that is one single day in continual revival, which was the first of those 8 hells. 30 of those a month, 12 of those a year, and 500 of those a lifespan. So this probably equates to something like 9 million human years.
대신도 밀로자다 니자다 십자다 제자당 아니 동주견이 숨주 자숨네 현주 왕제 바르기에서 림신도 샤 지긴베 디체세네 헤이로 동미 그래서 로동제 니동제 시동제 제동 주동 투보사
Likewise, 100, 200, 400, 800, and 1600 human years respectively form a day in the other 5 desire God realms, ranging from the 33 up to controlling others' emanations, and their lifespans can be 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, 8,000, and 16,000 God years.
숨자숨 타다 가된 추가 현주 원시세 지야시로 제가 디수 야야 마마마 차기도 샤 집에는 아주 밀로 대시 저기 당보체데 밀로 갸달라 아니 숨자숨 지체 안델야 샤바지 딜야니 니야레 지치야 가실레 마마마 줘야지 디제도 가된 출가 현주 원시.
So here we see reference to the God realms ranging from the 33 up to controlling others' emanations. So these refer to the God realms in the desire realm. So it's usually called the heaven or the 33. Then there's Gandhan. Then there is perhaps called emanations, and then there's controlling others' emanations. So these are 4 different God realms.
Yeah, that also that is the issue. And 대단히 림바터사 틱나네 and 가서 죽도토가 대단히 림바터사 틱나네 차위 발기 샤레레 제비기 로동네 죽시 티 죽동게 바르도 bar tubes rabdo chawan ni bargal jewadang ane barga chedang ane narme bani ane barga chik tuber jedang se yungshile sonsos.
These respectively form a day in Black Line through Hotel, and they can reach from 1,000 through 16,000 of their own years. In very Hotel, they can reach for half an intermediate eon, and in a VC, 1 intermediate eon.
That was it. Nadonala, that in Yuegi, DJ, that don't Garisungore, Sene. Chesan nyawala du su bene dunga deni nyongu gore says dunga ba deni dunga she that desuge logic mind ba logic ba lot pe chik bumtra mo deni dus nyongu gore chesan legi tibu maso nibade maso ba lo bumtra mo nyongu gore says those chin some died dan a ju deni gore says how go che how go dan a ju ga some dance ya da ma mini ke ba ina Neodelia Lodigis Pumtrash Mount Yongo, what is? Then Yongo really a Dunga bottom of Yongo edge. Yongo Dunga Yongo Yimbadwada, Dunga Yongo. That Dunga Yongo is that Dunga Dennis Yongo, that Yongo the best Sassare, some big some jet, that the Dunga Dilemata and Tabinus and be sometimes. That Denigi, Lord Denigi road, Ringla Yongo do that. Tikablia Kawachi and a Kamer, what I go to be a Kamer, just a lot to get to be a Ragomar. Just I may answer that. Mahom, but I didn't get tired like Alekawacha was. Just I didn't some that never didn't some didn't had tell my key by the Deniki Lonyo, young bet that to go about me by young best. Just I tell them my key what did that danger military to go, you couple of young tell my key what the touch it imagine the tap minutes and be some that died there. Just not these sometimes died that kind of children. Yama deeper Sasha didn't get any Yabotopshu shaggy shout on chair. Never say that. And the Mohbana didn't get deeper jig me, simply part Simpson deeper my chair. That he don't know, Keva come to the two eggs and be done. So some look horror, they did it. Dangajele, you didn't in the Yores, and sometimes did my jig, tablam did down to chair, go up that man's look of Yede, Jesanko Yede by Inza, did my jig, tablam di, and to that the chair warriors, Jesadi, my jig, tablam di, carriage warriors in Yama, Tipasasha, Kusavana. Got Nimbotopshukone shot on chair. Then Mahomana didn't get deeply like a match of a people about them. Then Mansuke and Gawakan, nature to be Sudim Soyata, Jenchimba the Serva, the Junior Jam Nijokomia, Gawakan to do to it. Then they go Korea, Chatseva, Chatsia Soba, the Niki Sunga Saya Soba, and the Made for a Chubuya Soba, Jam Nijokomia Soba. Nina so Tombani to be shared at Dusin Comda, so you do, so you can develop Pape, get your account to the Nikonjusumla, Ya Lama Idam Sangelia, Debatich to drink down the Tibetan, the Shaggy, Sambi Meba Tej to Chase, the negative tuition occasion to be a Chawaro. Jezadi, di Drubiagi Dondala, Denish Matubana, Momba, the Deneki Kanga Denis Yorta as a sungo, that don't embody there.
What we've looked at here is the description of the sufferings that are being experienced by beings born in the 8 great hells. And also there's been an explanation of the inconceivable length of the lifespans there. And the purpose is to lead us to the initial thought of how could I possibly endure such suffering for even a moment, let alone for such a period of time. And furthermore, recognizing that when suffering is intense, certainly something as intense as described, it becomes impossible to accrue virtue. So there's not only is the suffering intense and for an inconceivable period of time, but one can't accumulate any causes to counteract that ripening non-virtue. Therefore, one has to endure this suffering until that non-virtuous karma is completely exhausted. This then leads us to the purpose of this reflection, which is to come to a stable determination. I have to purify. I have to purify and close the door on the accumulation of new virtue, new non-virtue. So this reflection is to lead us to this deep determination. Because whilst we may apply ourselves to purification now and again and have some wish to refrain from non-virtue, we need to be much more disciplined in this regard and engage in virtue extensively and with strong intent refrain from non-virtue. So by calling this the description to mind before one engages in purification practice, it will lead to the four opponent powers arising very powerfully in one's mind. For example, if one calls to mind regret, so one recalls non-virtue that one has done and others that one can't recall but knows that one would have done at some previous point. Thinking of the ripening effects of that non-virtue, deep regret will come. Deep regret will come. And based on that deep regret, one will turn to the basis, to the three jewels, to one's Lama as well, and make the heartfelt promise, I will not engage in such behavior again. I'll bring this to an end now. I will no longer not take care of my mind. I will be diligent in ensuring I create no more non-virtue. So in this way, we generate regret, go for refuge, and make the power of the promise in a sincere and heartfelt manner, and with the strength of mind that, when repeated again and again, leads to a transformation in our behavior. Then one engages in the opponent power of the antidote, and here one could engage in any accumulation of virtue that one is inclined towards. Most important would be that of ethical restraint. So this will have been accumulated to some degree with the prior opponent powers, but one can also think very clearly how one will restrain one's mind from coming under the influence of the afflictions. Moreover, so one can here meditate on ethics. Also, one can meditate on generosity, or actually physically practice generosity through making water bowls or mandala offerings. Or one can recite mantras such as the Mani mantra, or engage in analytical meditation such as love or compassion or the wisdom realizing emptiness, all as forms of antidotes to weaken and eventually eradicate all previously accumulated non-virtue.
Denegi nyevi dunga dige do susu yore samda jang zo anjige di shingba di yahore sambige anjo da ya maji ba chego sama da ko do yahore sam benanga joge saji roda saji del pe lamga meba kanga shibu ji kanga shibu shoba na anjo de ma joy anjo ha mo je digal ba joy go zu shoba na mi sheda jo opening maro ma do lamga yabu mendo pe kanga shibu do su ne su sheba na 안 소속이 하고는 어디 빼 하고 주어서디 내 하모가지 편이 좋은 빼사사래 지금 결혼에 딩알이야 뒤도세 시야도 빼 하고 주어서 쌤이 소속이 디마로에 탑람 소소 탑시 예대 봐자 디 하고 주었음 그러 빼 하고 주어서 등이 디 하고 하고 주어서 그 미팅알이야 뒤도 빼 하고 주어서 투시사지 그러고 내가 그러거든 어디 나시 나 저게 예비기 네 상가를 다 먹어서 제가 디벌을 짐고 말해 매점마다 상기에다 좀 되게 좀 뭐든 봐도 남도 되는 요르다 도시기 말다 디디네 강아 야와서 돼 나선게 디디네 강아 요래 제가 간 되네 요래 제가 델야 마로에게 탑람 다든 지역으로서 당원은 라미기 다사기 때 제를 맞춰다 되네 것도서 만술려도 남도지 야고시 만술려 tukzewa manzu kale manyoya 강아 마태게 된다리 양아서 투제 원게 라마는 기든 투신 소원 빼 마시 게딘 신부 유레샤서 베게 소수기 라마 게딘 제수 대바다 제수 전에 다 딘딩이 라미기 송라 되네 다 람림 대솔라 되네 게도 사고 빼 야고슈서 당이 델야 마제베게 탑람디 당이 베수시 인세베게다 디분 기룹지기 인세베 삼다 되가 또 다니 뭐 디레 다 삼당 거야 돼.
Hearing about this topic, reflecting on this topic, is not something one would naturally be inclined towards. That being said, though, the way we should relate to this is just like if we were about to embark on a journey and a friend were to warn us, say, be careful, where you're going is gravely dangerous. either avoid it, you should ideally avoid going there entirely, and to do so, rather engage in this kind of preparation so as to protect yourself. And if we were to receive such advice, we deeply appreciate the kindness of our friend from saving us from a terrible fate. So with such an attitude, we should appreciate that the Buddha and Lama Tsongkhapa and our teachers have presented the suffering experiences that potentially await us, the suffering experiences being endured by others right now, and with a sense of appreciation towards their kindness for having warned us, we commit ever more sincerely to turning away from non-virtue.
jeleti게 수 tuyanje pa chaya da an ba ji ja ko ma de ge ma lu ya da den den ma menal ma lu je kang du su ti ge se nye song ba de de ne ge kang a ti ge se de de ma de ne ge do a den ma nye song ba de je za da de le ya nye song ba de ge meni ma nga zo kang a de ge nye song ba de ge le di bo yo ro yo ma res je za ko zo ya an tar je 고도다 강한 아주 녀와 벌리는데 강아 야야 되네 누구냐 야다는 디보마도 개와사야 균이 메르와 되네 녀와 균이 타라 메르와 세상도 콘솔리티 콘솔 젠달이야데 베 차위길이야 되네 강도 콘솔 차고 치고 말고 콘솔 강아 요 말이 베스 시티워시 되네 게 아주 도와함 디월리 거래 그지 콘솔 눈알 제해로 와니서 제가 자초보다 직지도 코로나를 차고 치고 말이베스 콘솔을 강아 요 말이베스 간솔을 강아도 코로나 강아 요 말이베스 그 안에 그 디버사고 말이베스 그 안에 게디나 디니체네 안에 상게 요 말이베스 되게 삼노시 아주 디고함 더 빨리 용고로 와다.
So hearing about these descriptions would have seen that in several of the hells there were hell guardians who are inflicting the pain and torture onto suffering beings. So the question may well arise, what about them? Surely they must be suffering intensely. They are holding these blazing weapons. Surely that must make them suffer. They are in this environment of extensive suffering. And moreover, they are causing pain to others. Are they not suffering intensely and creating further non-virtue?
안데려야 디소 닝앙조 녀송과 강한 제현 징앙조 디시 난고르데 공앙조 규태디베 셈젠지 말해서 거다. 앙조 두시 난고르스 잉앙조 레기 왕에 니께만 앙조 레가 봐서 레기 왕기 되는지 앙조 강한 제현 앙조 두시 난고르스 레기 지주 코로나스 레기 왕에 지주 용마도 앙조 규태디베 셈제 현다지 앙조 레 강한 제현 구디지 앙조 강한 제거스 되네 말해서 제가 디고서 레기 앙조 두시네 레기 왕기 아주 레기 아주 레세비 제우 줍대 되네게 아주 되는지 강아지 난거래스 난거래세.
Rather, we should understand that they are appearances to our mind, that due to our karma, that this karma that has led to our rebirth in such a place, due to that karma, we have such appearances to our minds, appearances of these hell guardians. We shouldn't relate to them as being separate sentient beings with their own continuum. That's not the case. They rather arise to our mind as appearances and are due to our own non-virtuous karma.
되네게 제자도 수된 능거 소소 레기 왕게 제디시 나도가 마도 랑le 규태디베 셈제 현다징아조 강아지 보고 뒤에 되네시가 말이 되는데 그 셈제 장아조 자메 사고 강래 강아 지도 코로디나는 유대 코마체와 제어 말바디로와 제가 그것네 미엄말 제가 되네게 셈제 현다지 규태디베 셈제 말에 나아조 레기 왕게 낭잠기도 능거래 제가 베디 강아지 요바지 능거래세 능 되네게 나네 소소게 아디 나와 나신
So we shouldn't have the mistaken understanding that these are actual sentient beings who somehow aren't suffering in this environment, but rather There are, due to our own karma, there are these appearances to our mind. So in this way, we are reminded once again how it's through our appearances that, to our mind, it's through appearances that we believe to be true, that we create causes for suffering.
And Gabriel social Ganga Shu to me Dukja Sobo social Ganga Shu to the same day, Shu Maki was Shu, shooting and Nilam Nalatoya Chorva. Chizanti, and you could announce a motto, didn't win around some Michigan, Deniging Azola Ganga Tigers and did Yomarata, Ni City, Homer, Nilamlia, Niku, Nilamlia, Nansam Cheer, that Nilam Nango in his head, Nilam in Yagasu went there, Hashin. When an Ashin, the Dunga, assembly, Dunga, you to go, you go, Ganga Tevan, Michanaji, Ganga Tevan, Nilam, the Toy, Tevan, Socialia, Ganga, Majiwata, Ganga, Yungorova. Yanchi Shanaji to Gobushu, two, says Galala, Yungorova, then you see the couple Yungdo, then you see the couple assembly, Galala, Yaja Tonas and Besamba, Gabriel Yaji. Duksha told you say the same Maki Amdraj, just a Nilam in Amdra, Shena, you but you say because the Dishuki the ladder. She said, just that in that Nilam never didn't win a ranching, some junior best in Yomarva, Nilam Nasa Mato, when you're a match, some Mervada. Petina, which I guess.
The analogy of a dream here is it's very useful to understand how things appear to us as being true or being real, but they do not exist in the way that they appear. So to be clear, these realms are a place of existence. But if we can draw an analogy to dream appearances, and that if one is is dreaming and one has a dreadful nightmare, in that nightmare, there are many appearances to one's mind which one takes as real. And whilst one's dreaming, tremendous fear arises in your mind. Then when you wake up, you recognize that was just a nightmare, but you still are shaking inside. And it may take quite a while for your mind to calm down. Similarly, hopefully dreams tend to be more pleasant. And there are many pleasant appearances in our dream. Maybe we're having a nice time with our friends, somewhere beautiful. And then we in our dream, everything's very pleasant. Our mind is enjoying these appearances. And when we wake up, we recognize it was a dream, but our mind is in a very pleasant state. So this then, we can see how through appearances to our mind, or through taking appearances to our mind as being true, we have an actual emotional response to that, whether pleasant or unpleasant.
Gabriel has a new who in a social assembly, or Michi, Nalakishi, the Nalia, Novaki, or Nalakana, Jigdus, getting on a damn young the Nalaji Jigdu said, so now the Chitinese Shagor, what they got Sosugi, semi to Bacha Mangoyas, the Bacha means say, the Nigin, Semlia, Sosulia, when era Chiki, Kishi, about Sosulia, Kanatiga, so Nangor, the Shanda, when it made water, she's not Sosugi, Sem Nawala, the Nigungor, what that, the Nigi, you on the Digi, and the Sosupe, Maki, was you are the Dungan, the Yungo, that was also that.
And this doesn't only happen to us in the sleeping state. So, for example, we can be lying in bed and have a whole lot of thoughts going on, recalling what someone has said to us, how someone has acted towards us, and our mind is busy with all of these thoughts. But all these are ripening imprints. They are just ripening imprints thoughts that we have. There's no one saying these things to us, there's no one doing these things to us, but rather we have imprints ripening. Yet, we take these imprints to be true. In other words, we take that what is appearing to our mind as being real, as if it were actually happening. So we'll understand, of course, that these are memories, but the way we relate to it is giving these memories a reality and existence that they just do not have. All that is happening when we're lying in the privacy of our room is there's a variety of imprints on our continuum ripening. And we are relating to those, interacting with them as if they were real, as if they existed in the way they appeared.
jen le sarwa jisa legi basha semgi ten yo ba za gabriel dine gi basha ro chi sejin so su ya dine kanga che kan yo yin ye song ba jo ro ye song ba de legi basha min de gu me ba semje jan da jo ma la ro jisa dine gi nyong go ye le sa ba ina ma shin yi le gabriel ya basha de gi sejin dine gi kanga che na ro ju go re se.
So then, in a similar manner, in the hell realm, so the being is being tormented by suffering, but there are appearances to their mind of a being inflicting pain on them. The being isn't there, they are suffering, but the being isn't there. So in this way, through the ripening imprints, they are experiencing things as being true, when all there are a appearance due to ripening imprints.
Dinigi, na donala, diso, dona nimbola, dinigi, nyewigi, nyesung wada, jia me cao sa digiti, danganzo, machine yen and many dirichi, jia me, da me, dangan the digi, yorbasin, di mewa sere. Jezang Zugi, Nyawa Kiri Jia Kang, but dine yore, dine nyesung ganti lerwa, Jezang, dine as a machine yen and many dirichi and the chikuding, lega yorbasin, dine yo marese, Jezang Zugi, ngānsu lēgi dīkpa sā bāchā shā dīkpa sā yudu dīkpa dī ngānsu sīmgi dō bāchā shā yudu tā nyewāl mā lēgi wāng nyewā kī yudu bāchā ki dīki sūngi sīmgi dō shā shī bēgi tā bāchā dīki sē shē dīkpi dību bāchā dī sē shē dī dību dī mī yungu wā dā mī gō rē dī mī nchī sōsō lā dī nē kāngā jī yungu mā tō dī sōsō lā dīwa mē dīki nyewā nā shandā jī mā dī rī chē shē o dā kō dī wā dīwa nā ngā dī kāngā jī sī dī nē ki dī rī chē shē yā chō mē rī wā dā.
So the way of relating to hell realms, it takes a little bit of care in the sense one shouldn't be dismissive of them or something I can't see, therefore it doesn't exist, nor too literal in the sense of seeing, taking this description and then imagining, oh, there must be beings there who are creating the cauldrons, there are beings there who are using bellows to blow the heat of the furnaces. So that's then taking it too far. But you understand that when powerful non-virtue ripens, it ripens in ways that are very different from our own experience right now, but it ripens in ways similar to what is described here. So therefore, we should understand these hellish existences as being the experience of deeply non-virtuous karma.
Dine zang jugi kewa kang tudu chubai na jesa dikong dikwa sha nimbo to shu ko ne dikwa sha kewa chi jesa da samna dangora da nyama che dikwa che no shas da jigi me sembe ge samda da dikwa digi ya control da kyapso to che dikwa sha gi sembe samda chi chasa da dine gi kewa che den dikwa sha ge donal ya anju kewa control cho puya re jamni je komya re ka kewa chugo ro jesa di kewa di pha chugo de kapla 대지 가서 셈기 때문에 디고 여기다 고 롬바로 슈글마 롬바로 진데 메타도 메데 차와도 셔셔저도 슈도 감주고로 디나시 나주기 셈기 톤에 셈기 톤에 대바 제지도 제네 개와 줍디니 기념는 삼당에도 디니 가세 슈체 나와 견삼기 대지 셈데도 디비 바자 샤샤게 디게 바 누버 충충 두고라 제가 누버 충 줘봐나 디 데우미야 말와디 마오바데 동아녀요 말와 제가 디네자 다등아 주고 고갑 유비 띠인디 고갑텔라 다디 셈미디 디바디게 파샤고래 해서지 대샤타디 님보 뜻이 이제 계슈 주비에들에 나가죠 개와 주비에들에 가제 개와 가제 주투비나데 디기 디바샤고다 nimbo topshi samdanje shabana diva nganzu shayala topcha da kaji kunlon ya semlia chikazi semshu chero chene gewa dubaina dizi gewa di pyeche da semshu shirame shada shoru chena yandi di gewa di desnibo chunwa nganzuge zo kunlon da ralebe sedi 지난 다 semjen 탐지게 도나 samda gewa dubna gewa di aji sheragi nibo chechegoru 지난 데디디 장주 셈 공부이나 소야 장주 셈 공부인데 소야 디게 사그래 디바야 디게 다게 자그래 제가 장주 셈 공부이나 디바야 디게 샤고 소야 디사고래 사지 지산 장주 셈 디바 셈자 탐지교도 삼다와이나 또 딜레 채워지 메어와 디송도
So therefore one should understand that rebirth in the hells isn't something that another being has created for you. So it's not an environment created by other beings, nor has someone propelled you there. It's your own karma, your own negative deeds in the past, ripening at the time of death that propels this rebirth. So this is important to be clear on. So one doesn't imagine oneself as a powerless victim that has been sent to the lower realms, but rather it was one's own previous non-virtue that has compelled this rebirth. Because through thinking in this way, which is in accordance with reality how it is, it leads to a determination to bring an end to the accumulation of non-virtue and a deep regret for past non-virtues. And these are included in the four opponent powers. This regret, this recollection and regret of past non-virtue. This is an indispensable opponent power for not only purifying past non-virtue, but bringing an end to what one recognizes as wrong, as harmful. Moreover, through this correct understanding of the presentation of the lower realms, leads to a determination to not only purify past misdeeds and refrain from further misdeeds, but to strive in virtue. So in other words, to make effort in the four opponent powers. So engaging in this meditation in a way that's effective and has an impact on one's mind, what that means is one's determination to no longer engage in non-virtue, but to solely engage in virtue. The determination with which one engages in the four opponent powers is greatly enhanced. Therefore, one accumulates extensive virtue and purifies extensively. One's formal purification practice is not then just a mere expression of words, but it is engaged in a heartfelt manner. That means the same amount of time produces a far greater result. This is essential for us to be able to quickly transform our way of thinking. So this is how all the great bodhisattvas have practiced, and it is still how bodhisattvas will practice, because by reflecting on the lived experience of their kind mother beings, this leads to a strengthening of their determination to accumulate virtue so as to be able to help others ever more, help guide others to close the door to their own potential rebirth in the lower realms. So a bodhisattva will use a reflection such as this as to strengthen their determination to do all that they can to help their mother sentient beings, not to create the causes that will fall to the lower realms, but rather guide them away from non-virtue and towards the accumulation of virtue.
나는 니허 와서 들어셔도만 일단 니허의 니와 세디 다진마 니와 찬이기 또 찬이기 잠도 니허도 요래서 그러다 니와 찬이와 되게 집에는 또 동아 또 충화를 윤통화다 충화하셔거래 나들이 될이야 니반 니허 세디네 니와 기보를 라양스 그 시시당 고시시유라스 대다기 치료도 자기 레비 고신 라와 델라양 아니 고시시유스 아니 고레레네 셈제냐와바 하바 시시유스 되네 두스네 숨고래 대바도 좋았나.
We'll continue. Now we come, having looked at the great hills, we come to the neighboring hills. So the intensity of the suffering here is not that of the great hills where it is the most intense. Each of the 8 great hills has 4 walls and 4 gates. They are surrounded by an iron fence, which also has 4 gates. Outside each of these gates, there are 4 neighboring hills of sentient beings.
And di chiru pa di ane di goshi chiru pa jare gorsha yorese je chiru to jagi rawe gorshi ane gorne gorshi deyang goshi yo ja rawe gorshi bedila den ma ji gorshi di goshi pa yang pa gorshi yin de ne goshi yorese goshi yorese je sumudwa.
These neighboring hills are in the 4 directions, so that they are to be found to the east of the great hills, to the north, to the west, and to the south of them. And as described here, each of the 8 great hills has 4 walls and 4 gates, so each of them are surrounded in this way, and they're surrounded by, and that in turn is surrounded by an iron fence with a further 4 gates.
고르리네 심진냐와바 하마 시시여스데 다디니고 고르리레 데지여바데 데레야 냐와바 하마 데두수 시시여레사리.
And then beyond that, outside each of these gates, there are further 4 neighboring hills of sentient beings.
다 시디가르스네 다두두스네 당보 장가지고 매 마음으로 요업세 직시에 데네 로냥게 담레 지비기 담로 dar namba se chikchi ni che tene puri lamso se ji sumche tene chulung rameo se de shi che san cho shi ko shi de dan wo de kaso re melung me marmor se da tene ronya dam se da ane puri gi lamso se da tene chulung rame se da odu shi ming de shi ne tene shi yor cho re du su shi yor se di do.
And the neighboring hills are named. So the first is the pits of burning embers. The second is a swamp of putrid corpses, or the swamp of excrement reeking of corpses. Thirdly, the road of razors. And fourthly, the river without a ford.
Me marmor se dile garson din ma rodu gala chik me chu chik bar de bin ngan ju gi sing da de ne gi me dang de kan se sing cha san chi san ne ji 바 소화할 매발 막 하고 시대 쉬어와다 매 쉬어와디 매 마음을 쓰라 되네지 근데 안디가래서는 내가 당보 매 마음을 눕비모 눕점이었어แต่고마 잡수도 그 강바드 마딤도 비모갈 바 딤도에게 투리 마선 되는 시월에서 그러다 비모 눕점 예배 열라스 셈전 대남 니에서도 좋아하나 der 강바 샤베체 네 바바다 샤차 군치 지글라 대베체 대다 라르기오스 지나든 마드다 녀바데다 마네서 주직 도고 삼제 센파 조지갑라 다강버드 메마고 가우라 된 마주도 강버드 비모가 마 눕제 마 친의 차상 친의 바바다 샤다루 진의 차상 치용을 지고를 제래 다디나자 가져요래 다야도 신의 야 자자도 야쟁아마나 샤디 수용을 제래 다야지 가서는 샤수에면에 야제 강보 자고로 이거 제자 야수 양마 강보 자 마치 양야 야자는 야수 두신 용구 지고래 동안 용고래 세래 대비해서 날겨워서 봐.
So the first, the pit of burning embers, is described as such. It contains hot embers up to the knees. When sentient beings go there looking for a home, as they set their feet down, their skin, flesh, and blood are burnt away. And as they lift their legs up, their feet regenerate. So they are actually sinking down into the hot embers up to their knees, and their skin and so forth is burnt away. But as they pull what remains of their leg out, it immediately, due to the power of the karma, that propelled this rebirth, it regenerates, and with every step, they continue to suffer like this.
Niwa ronya ase dile dedan dab chaba nas dinigi ani chisi gi sei damnyo dasa damrotar namba yobala semjin ne chowa dagi ani gawa na der gelne go manche jingde dugos dine dam dena buchunen shie chawa yebe dedagi ne baba da sha da yuba da ruba nam big big sa gang la du xin ne ruor che dos.
The second of the four, a swamp of putrid corpses. There we go. The second one, the swamp of putrid corpses, or the swamp of excrement reeking of corpses. As they cross it in search of a home, sentient beings fall into it and sink up to their heads. In this swamp, there are worms called sharp beaks that pierce the skin, flesh, sinews, and bones and dig through them all the way to the marrow.
Tsongkhapa tinishman ma chodu kaplaya tinege gangba ma zudu ane gangba nalaya dinale butiki sotyap ani ma rirudu dine butiki dinale butiki sotyap che ane gangba da sha ji zubeke da sha da rugo da baba da chasa duchine sache duchine sago reje wada dusene ya deso ya lang yudu ya suwin yuro ya su ya ma ri denishe duchine bato meba dunga yongo reje wa.
So here, as the sentient being, the hell being, tries and walks through this swamp or this marsh, they are consumed by these or bored into by these insects, causing them intense pain. But as with the other hell experiences, due to the power of the karma that's led to this rebirth, their body rejuvenates and their suffering continues. So therefore, as with all these hells, the suffering is not short-lived, but it is incessant.
Puri lamso sayadi go reche wala dusine da dine del puri lamso sayadi da dam de da dab chabana de dam de wada dab chabana puri so tamba lam yes da di be nobody ge pa kha lo lam gal ma sun dusi chasan ji gyan ya cha de reche le dusine se sha ba yes lam yes de semjen ne so wa da der song wa da gang ba sha ba na ne ba ba da sha da cha 下场了绝了那电年得到那说其他人嘛他都说的他只讲讲那我说这样的人嘛恐怕有时候刚把的嘛下节嘛这刚把的下到如果查他嘛接都不接触过来人家呀家人对他刚不都背后说包有的人下的给你嘛来使用过然后都是的东安用过来噻的都是用过来这
What these all have in common, like we saw with the very first of the great hells, the reviving hell, is that one's suffering is continuous. That as one's body is destroyed or one is killed, one immediately revives or one body immediately rejuvenates. But this isn't a healing rejuvenation in that the beatings or the burrowings by these insects just continues incessantly. So now the third of these neighboring hells, near the swamp there is the third one, a path fitted with razor-like teeth. When sentient beings walk along it in search of a home, as they put their feet down, their skin, flesh and blood are lacerated. and as they lift their legs up, their feet grow back again.
난 디네 더 추릉을 메시아 디르와다 디가레스네다 딘마 올레스다 디네 데다 답녀와나 답차바나 나사 저지 로마제 유에데스 디네 심진남 네 초와나 디네 네 초와나 다기 데다 데르송데스 디 디말라 딘지 쾌바나 네 신리 랄지 라데 데다게 아니 야라 닐라나 제도스 아니 데다 데르 제와나 니키 세워 다오네 니 잡네 토진 사오스
The text continues. Near that is the forest of sword leaves. So this then was the
Raji Lomeka Sati Sumbadiresha.
So near that is the forest of sword leaves. So this is included with the third one. As sentient beings wander around in search of a home, making use of its shade and sitting down, swords emerge from the trees and chop up their limbs and other body parts. When they faint, reddish-brown dogs come up and grab them from behind and eat them.
Jaza dinigi da dinigi lamga din ma ji kangbu tu din da din ma ro de ya tige xin dong yo re xin do da din ma ji ka le ha ji xin de jipsi wal de jipsi wal ji nge su so ji du de ka la yin ma xin ma ra ji pa chen ma sa jin de ya xu xian kangbu la pa ji da cha sang du xin de jian de yan la da cha sang pa du bu ji go re ji xie go re dine ji xie de dine din ma ki dine gi lian xin pa ji The
third of the neighboring hells has these different parts to it. So first, the beings walk along these razor, this pathway with razor-like teeth. Then one gets to a forest full of sword leaves. So there's this progression as one moves through this neighboring hell, that one encounters these different suffering encounters.
And then, now Dinma Rudu Dinma Tar Rudu Dedan Dabchaba Jaki Xin Shambale Saluyes, De Simjin Nesoa, Dedar Sowan and Dele Zedu Jude, Zebi Tsemigi Jaka Katurdu Dawada, Babi Kajindo de Dedagi, Yanada Nila Shasos. Jesa Dinma Rudu Xin Shambala say Xin Chiores, that in Madu de Shingali as Achugo Rege Mitiki, that's Simgenti. That's how do Xin Digi Yagalmas on the Jino Mujanja, Mahalo de Yaza, then the Didiki Shajin Bakangashu, Yoyada. Ya Zilage, young Ma Babadu, the Shingi Yaga Didiki Yakalo Yores, she's a Ma of the Handin Mad Jan Ducin, Gangayungo, Gangachigores, this one. I say you did Simje Neso, so on a della Zedu Jude, Zebe Ceremigi, Ze Kayar Dawadang, and Marcasa Babi Se Kajindo that the Dedagi Yalada, Nila Shesu, Shekos, the Shago, Resande.
This third neighboring hell then has these two parts, and there's a third part. Near that there is the forest of iron-spiked trees. So this, as one moves past this, the razor-like teeth, one comes to the forest of sword leaves, and then the forest of iron-spiked trees. Sentient beings wander around there in search of a home and set about climbing the trees. As they climb up, the tips of the thorns point downward, and as they climb down, the tips point upward, chopping up their limbs and other body parts.
And in Madrudu, and it carriers in it, Dena, Kachaki, Chushin, Jayubi, Di Chabam, Gola, and then Dene, Migdi, Tension, Sawa, Dedani, Trenchi, Nor, Davi, Shindu, Drawajitu, Jawas, Jazadin Madrudu, the same Ja. Chodo Jawi, Dennis Dungeon, and Desugi, two Sosugas Jadigi, Chodo Jaji, Mik Doyada, Dennis Dungeon, Dushin Sigores.
Birds with iron beaks alight on their shoulders or heads peck out the eyeballs and eat them. These places are similar in that the harm is inflicted by sharp weapons, so they should be considered as one. So these are these three parts to this one neighboring hell.
That is Chamba Shibadi, Shambala Dongbo, Sharma Lidan, Dabchaba, and Chulung, that Chulura Mesede, maybe Major Barba Turkey, Nene, Chigi, Chukovia, Gawa, Simjan near Soba, der Lungne, Ning Denwo to Droshan, Sebani, Berna, Zangchu Gangwa Me, Chimbo, Barwe Nadu, Sema so Luba Shino, Chulung di Damnine, Yala Lana Ubatan, Chilmada, Yasua da Dene, Chirjudi, then young meeting last, ya don't you mars, then Chimam Japchir Chune, Sashi Chimburg, Barwala, Kanjedu Shade, Jiduji Dios, Dedaki, Da Jia Mishe, Mitonte, Wanjang Teso, Gomo, Sevana, Jaji Tulum Mebawa, Bawa, and Kanado Jujin, Sang Kova, Karlugo, Neo Hova, Nisewa, Niba, Tsese, Ngemedu, Say Moshe, Moshi Shedo, Wanja Dunga, Dedanyo, Legi, Nuba, Masiba Desidu Dunganyo Euros.
Near the forest of iron-spiked trees, there is the fourth river without a ford, which is filled with seething, boiling water. Sentient beings in search of a home fall into it and are cooked as they bob up and down, like peas thrown in a cauldron of water over a great fire. On each bank of the river, guardians hold sticks, or rather staffs, hooks and nets, and do not let anyone escape. Having pulled them out with the hooks or nets, the guardians place them face upward on the blazing great foundation and ask them what they want. When they say, "I don't know and cannot see anything, but I am hungry and thirsty," the guardians pour molten copper and put fiercely blazing lumps of iron into their mouths. Levels of yogic practice explains that the lifespan in the neighboring and occasional hells is uncertain. However, those sufferings will continue to be experienced as long as the karmic potential for experiencing them has not been exhausted.
지나 대소 체세 가지레스는 대소야 녀바 요마레스 녀바 녀메레스 지나 세이 모신은 손시 이나야 레기 제부디 코로나데 되는 용어 레기 사시비 제부디 마소 바도 용어 작을레스 용어를 해서 어두시네 다디 현재 아주 니베 찬이 요거 삼다다데 바슈사바레 찬이 요거 디 바시사르다 디바도.
So the experience in this fourth neighboring hell river without a ford is as presented here. And as we see, they're suffering again intensely. And then when they come to the hell guardian and they ask what do they want, because of the intensity of the suffering they've experienced, they say, "I don't know," because they are unable to think clearly because of the intense pain. They cannot think clearly, they cannot see anything, but all they know is they are suffering. Hence they ask for something to eat, something to drink, desperate to try and find somewhere safe from suffering. They've been searching for a home and trying to eat or drink to try and ease their suffering. they ask for help in this regard, and instead they end up being tormented even further. And then as we see in the final paragraph, the sufferings or the lifespan of beings here is uncertain, but it comes down to, until the karmic causes that have led to this result have been exhausted, this torment continues.
And the how go that didn't how go or that they let the matana tabin sempe sometime did do chagro than you didn't do some dabby, then did how go at the chamber. Gom said the didn't get jeva didn't in the yard didn't do said how go at getting going at that bed didn't ever yet the compassor. Says I dig how go that I tell it the matana tab me to me Dele de Makiwa Chin, some daje, then on the Yamasashi Dibati, the Shubanashi, Yamboto Shukunesha, and the Momban, Manzuki Tele Yagata, then Ya, when you go one matter that happened to be Tavi, Ditoya, Dondalaya, and to Geshe Thubten Rabten, Damaji, Namu Shubanaji, Jingato Chum Soya, Tajimba, Sobala Sopa, Jenju Somiala Sopa, to see Geshe Thubten Rabten, that Donda did Geshe Thubten Rabten, Dondala, to see them. Just the Hamovaina, and it Dele Tarduga Sambaki to Marriage, Tarduga Sambaki, Donna Geshe Thubten Rabten. That delay to Sian, so Gasher some down to weather, that dinner negate as Simja, that Ninja, some Simja didn't do a new as a ninja, some Ninji Geshe, that the Simjan didn't do all the tower, didn't touch it, something, didn't get Ninja. Comje Delia, and they call some gear that the Inzangada, Consulia, that and all do Nubok minuting, and this Semjay peg it to dig Dunga say that dig to be a Dondala. Then imagine Taban days and Semja Tamji the San Yoko Toba Chigisibe, Jashu Sem Gear, you want to go there. She's not Lucine, this Tambo Shuba Nashi, not the nigger some die to tell it dinner, and you give what you want you go about to you, don't you, Dumba. Dine tarbiyo koma toye tarba donye dunba, dine simja sanyo koma toye janshu semge jamni je ge di du syonggo res ya wo ge tu wo de chizan di samdai de ge chemo res ndu sine da dona ningbo de ga dine ge samdai de ge ju ju ge don da lo sunggo de dine samdai de ge ju da wo da ba de ju go res wo da.
In conclusion, the purpose of listening to teachings on this is to understand the realities of samsara, to look beyond our own lived experience and recognize that the tremendous non-virtues or the powerful non-virtues that beings create have karmic results. And those karmic results may well be something beyond anything that humans can experience. And the very purpose of that understanding is to lead us to the determination. Now, whilst I have some capacity, I have to take care of myself. I have to ensure that I do not create non-virtue, certainly not of an intense, of a great magnitude, but I must even do my best to refrain from slight non-virtue as well. Because now I have an opportunity to deal with my mind. If I'm born in any of the lower realms, not just the intense suffering of the great hells or the neighboring hells, but in any of the lower realms, I will lack the capacity to deal with my mind. And therefore, I will be helpless, totally under the control of my karma. Now, having met the Dharma, being under the care of a teacher, I can do something about my situation. And this leads to the indispensable outcome of this reflection, to engage in purification and accumulation. And this is as described previously, but essentially one must come out with a determination in terms of ethical restraint, to restrain oneself within the confines of what's ethical, at the very least one's physical and verbal behavior, but ideally one's mind, restraining it from coming under the influence of the afflictions. But I'd also encourage you to take the meditation further than engaging in the four opponent powers, like presented earlier, but to then follow that with a meditation of bodhicitta, whereby one recognizes that mother sentient beings are in this very situation right now, and use then this reflection to generate compassion for beings suffering in this way. and use then the compassion that arises to give rise to the wholehearted resolve, the determination to help beings, not create the causes to fall into the lower realms. So all those that we know, or other fellow human beings, to at the very least not act in a way that will cause them to create non-virtue, and where we can, guide them to create virtue. And moreover, in addition to the wholehearted resolve to generate bodhicitta, the determination that in order that I can engage with others in the most skillful of ways, I have to become a Buddha. So thereby one generates bodhicitta. So this is the skillful way to engage in this meditation. We are in the context of the Lamrim, Mahayana text. So we reflect on the sufferings of the lower realms to transform our own behavior, and included in that to generate compassion and bodhicitta.
맞아 소소라랑게 디링다 안저 람림 도션 로아진데 단예위 동아 가르가용 바디야 하고송 단예위게 유디게 가르레드네 기요 딕발기 디바제발네 기요 바디야 하고송 다디네자 다 딕바마 메바서 단예와 딜레 타르답디 탑람디야 하고송 제사다 탑람디야 하고송 다디니기 탑리제기 된 튕긴 차상 차되어 고거 위에바디 하고 배 야고 중시하선 베데딩이 된이기 지나 denyewe dunga hagowa dunga gi gyue ba gyudi je kana yung ba hagowa ta di ma setup ti hagowa dirin gogop ni thoba de be yago chungsa se ge da jere me chi ge deni ge manzo le kalo na de be ma se ge din chi bu shu chungsa san be ta dirin ge hagowa de dirin ge den che ba je gogop yedi ka bli ya ge de deni ge an yawa de le thar ya ge tablan de di bong ge ru ti 디보 보야다 개워도 배제시는 지기야 선배다 샘주 깨다 되는 고급이야 중앙 배 약부 중수 선배 소수를 하려야 아니 지게 닝도 깨다 보고 깨다 되는 게 준비 도시의 삼다디 한 계시 뭐 차고 때 제상 소수를 하는 게 개와 되수 주셔바티 되는 게 개와 딜라 되는 샘진데 녀와바티게 동아들의 뉴도 타치냐 아니電상보 된되게 고바 토지 된데래 잠니셔라서 냠내지는 고외 동안에 처제 사기 고바 토비 율교와 쇼와서 배섬다죠 그래서我们 제외나 당연히 파이에 봐도 배봤어야다 아니면 이제 되는 지고고다 되는 게
The way I want to close our time together this weekend is the same way I encourage you to conclude each of these meditations, which is to reflect on your great good fortune that you've encountered the Mahayana Dharma, you've encountered the Lamrim, and you have the imprints and the opportunity to hear these teachings and to cultivate them within. This gathering of knowledge is greatly fortunate. So few people have this knowledge. And not merely having knowledge, but knowing that one can transform one's own mind. Because you also have knowledge about not just the sufferings in the lower realms, but the causes that lead to such suffering, and the antidotes, the opposing way, the virtuous ways of thinking, so as not to create such causes. So this is a positive thought, and it should lead, and you should make sure it leads to a strength of mind, recognizing, I'm not helpless. Those mother sentient beings, they are helpless. They cannot be helped. They cannot help themselves. But I am not in that position. I have due to the great kindness of the Buddha and Lama Tsongkhapa, I have come to hear this presentation. There is time. I can do something right now. And then right now, as well as with each meditation, commit to living a life of virtue, and do so that one's spiritual development can lead to benefit others. So our time here together, each of your reflections, and each time you call these teachings to mind, let it be within the motivation of wanting to be of ever greater service to others, of ever greater benefit to the lives of others. And thank you. We'll conclude therefore the weekend. Thank you.